Pollution has any effect on mineral composition in terms of air quality. Or he also did some study last year on bedding materials, whether adding bedding materials has any effect, and whether it is it has benefit in terms of manure or in terms of animal comfort. So that's why we did some study last year. As you can see from here, I'll talk about some pen bedding as well as two different protein level Dr. Van Anderson did last year. One is 12%, another one is 16%. According to NRCS, like typically protein level in feed is like 12 to 13%. We try to do at different levels whether it has any effect on mineral composition and other. So first I would like to acknowledge my co-author Dr. Saidul Burhan, then one of my graduate students, then Chandra Engel and Dr. Van Anderson, in terms of animal comfort, in terms of manure composition, and also in terms of air quality. But the other thing is that like whether if we change the type, whether we are getting more nutrient as excreted, whether it has any effect on the air quality. We also studied that one. And also whether you believed it or not regarding the greenhouse gas, it is happening. Some of you might believe it, some of you don't believe it. So that's why we are trying to see whether animal agriculture is contributing anything to the greenhouse gas. So we also monitored that one. The first thing I need to mention that we had 16 pens. Out of 16, 8 of them were bedded and 8 of them were not bedded. And we used corn stover as a bedding material, and it was not grounded. And we also had like 12% and 16% protein. So it was 4 replication. So basically we have 2 diets and also have bedding versus non-bedding. So we collected the manure sample from each pen. We collected a composite sample, every sampling event every month, then took it to the lab and we did analysis on different nutrients. Also we collected some gas sample using this wind tunnel. So we fabricated that one in the lab. Then we collected those gas sample from the pen surface. We placed it on the pen. Then we collected the gas sample inside. There is a Tedlar bag. Then we took it to the lab and analyzed what kind of composition it has. So we did most of the analysis in my lab. I have a equipment which is called latchet. With this one we measure all the nutrients. And with this greenhouse gas GC, we measure most of these methane, nitrous oxide and CO2 into the gas sample. So as you can see from this slide, if you see, this is the ambient air, like whatever we feel, the air temperature. This is the no bedding and this is the bedding. So basically if we use some bedding materials, it has reduced the surface temperature little bit, which can provide some source of comfort. If it is very hot and humid days, sometimes it might be a positive impact on the cattle comfort. But we have done this study only during the summertime. We have not done this one during the winter time. Whether during the winter time we will have a better impact, that it will act as an insulation so that it will have warmer temperature, then it will be better for the cattle, which we have not done yet. But definitely bedding. And I also looked at other research across the country. They also got similar positive result that bedding materials reduce the surface temperature, which will give comfort to the animal. Now, if you look at in terms of nutrient composition, you see like between bedding and non-bedding, statistically we have not seen any significant difference in terms of whether it is TN, whether it is fecal ammonia or TP or potassium. But one thing is that if we don't have any no bedding versus bedding, then available ammonia, which is volatilized component, it has more if it is non-bedding. The reason is that if we have a bedding material, it has the capacity to absorb some of this urine, which has more nitrogen component than the feces. So that's why bedding materials, it has a positive impact that it can absorb, then it will reduce some of this volatilization. So that's why we can see over here. That is, but statistically, we have not seen any differences, but there are some differences. Similarly, in terms of high protein and low protein, if we have high protein food, like they also have some, if they can intake more, but cattle, they have a capacity to absorb. So if they cannot absorb, then they will excrete that one as a manure. So if we have high protein, it also excretes more ammonia than the low protein. So if we have more excretion, then it will have like more ammonia loss as a, it will have more loss in terms of nutrients. So that's why it is not always good that if we have more protein, then we will gain most of the benefit out of it. But we are also losing some of these important nutrients. Now, in terms of gas concentration, if you look at this is the methane and this is the nitrous oxide. Again, we have not found any significant difference between the bedding versus non-bedding or different protein level. But the one thing is that if we have no bedding, we have found that less methane. So whenever we say the greenhouse gas, there are three types of greenhouse gas. One is carbon dioxide, one is methane, one is nitrous oxide. So everything we consider in terms of carbon dioxide. Methane is 21 times more global warming potential, and nitrous oxide is 210 times more global warming potential in terms of carbon dioxide. So if we look at that no bedding, it has less methane. The reason is that whenever last year it was pretty dry season, we did not have that much rain. And another thing is that whenever we have manure pile on the surface, if it is less accumulation, mostly it is called anaerobic, so aerobic condition. That means there are more oxygen. If there is aerobic condition, then it will generate less methane. But if it is bedding materials, if manure is accumulating over time, then it will create some sort of an anaerobic condition, or also microbes will break down some of this carbon material, then it can produce more methane. So that's why we are seeing over here in bedding over time it produces more methane. But in terms of nitrous oxide, non-bedding area, and it is true that like soil, if we disturb the soil, it produces more nitrous oxide. So that's why it is producing more nitrous oxide over here. But in terms of high protein and low protein, we have not found any significant differences whether low protein is producing more methane or nitrous oxide. If we look at from our experience and from this research, we have found that if we use the bedding materials, it can reduce the pen surface temperature, which will provide animal comfort. But again, as I said, we have done this study only during the summertime. We have not done this one during the winter time. So we need additional information what will happen during the winter time. And at that time, they need some sorts of bedding material for their comfort, also to prevent some of this bitter cold over here. And as I also said, in between bedding and non-bedding, we have not found any significant differences. The same thing is true with two different protein level. But in terms of TN and ammonia, we have found significant differences between the protein level. So if we fed more protein, it will also excrete more protein. So we are losing some of this nutrient. So we have to be, think in terms of animal weight or gain, then whether we are also losing something and polluting some of this environment. The next one is that so far, based on the protein level and based on the bedding materials, we have not found any significant differences in terms of greenhouse gases or air quality. As Dr. Anderson mentioned that he is doing some other study with different fat level. We are also collecting some air sample from here. As we move forward, then those information will be available. Then we'll be able to know whether different diets has any impact on greenhouse gases. And across the state they are also doing some studies, and we can compare our results with their results. So if there is any question, I'll be happy to answer them.
Shafi, looking at your chart, it looked like air temp was approximately 70 degrees, and we saw surface temps between 100 and 120. In absolute numbers, what's the difference between no bedding and bedding temperature difference? Can you recall?
I think most of the cases it was like around 10-15 degree differences. Yes, sure.
The temperature difference, we shot the surface temperature with the infrared gun,
Yeah.
morning, noon, and night. And in the morning we found somewhere around a 2 to 3 degree difference. And noon, it was more like 5 to 6. In the evening, it was 9, close to 10 degrees difference on average over the July-August timeframe.
Okay, and then also, have you looked at possibly? I'm really interested in the surface temp. If you were to take that bedding and actually apply water to it, would you think there would be an additional effect or a decrease in effect or no effect at all?
So instead of bedding, you are on to apply only
No,
water?
on top of the bedding, actually putting water on the bedding compared to the just ground surface. What do you think you would see?
The problem will be like if you spray water down, depending on how much water you want to apply, it might create some muddy effect as the animals are on the bedding. The other thing is that like if we have wet condition, it will generate more ammonia. So it will be ideal environment to create, or microorganism will work on that and it will produce more greenhouse gases than ammonia. The other one will be like if they are stamping around, then there will be muddy. So that will be the for cleaning and cleanness of the kettle, it will be messy.
Right. Where I'm going with this is sometimes we see weather patterns coming of 100, 105 degrees, and how do we cool our lot so we don't lose cattle out there? What kind of recommendation can we give our producers? Just in a short time, I'm not looking for a whole summer, and that's why I was kind of wondering what your surface temperature difference might be.
During that time, most of the cases our pen surface is pretty dry, but if you have a sprinkler system, periodic sprinkling system, then it will help cool down the temperature, body temperature, as well as and as long as the surface is a little bit watery and a little bit cool, it will also give some comfort to the animal. So in most of the southern state like Kansas and others, if temperatures go like more than 90 degree or 100, they spray, you have some sprinkler system, so which will comfort the livestock. As the surface is a little bit wet, they are walking around, it will also give them some comfort.
Right, but we don't have that consistent temperature in the high degrees here versus if we see a weather pattern coming, can we actually do something to wet the ground or to decrease that amount of thermal heat instead of investing in a whole sprinkler system, because sprinkler systems really aren't cost effective up here. They're too much investment for that short period of time.
Yeah, I think it will be beneficial for two reasons. Then one is our pen surface is really dry. Because of dry, it will produce a lot of dust. So if you can spray some water, like whenever temperature is 100 degree, even if you just spray some water on the surface, it will reduce the dust. Then it will provide a healthy environment to the livestock. At the same time, it will also reduce the heat stress for the livestock. So it will be beneficial. Not every day, whenever it is really hot and humid day, spray some water, then it will be helpful.